Well, today we're going to have chapter 45 of Genesis, and it is going to be interesting because we're going to see very easily how we got two different writers that are in this first five books of the Bible in the Torah. So open your books to your Bibles to chapter 45, and we're going to read everything just about is going to be the writer from the south. It's going to be with the J source, but there's going to be a couple of E sources slip in there, and those are the writer from the north. And we're going to be able to see how easy they do this. This redactor, he takes them and he puts just where he wants to put the different authors, and it's all up to him. And he is a priest from Jerusalem, but he's taking the two writers from the north and the south that are not in the priest of Jerusalem. So look at chapter 45, and I'm going to start reading. This is about Joseph. He has put his family through, put his brothers through as much difficulty as they could have, and as much as he can have, because he's going about to break down himself. Now, you remember, he's putting them through this, and they don't know that he's their brother. Verse 1 says, Joseph could no longer restrain himself in the presence of all his attendants, so he cried out, have everyone withdraw from me. So no one attended him when he made himself known to his brothers. So he sent out all of his assistants. And just he and his brothers there are now, and he's going to share with them who he really is. But his sobs were so loud that the Egyptians heard him, and the news reached Pharaoh's house. Now that's pretty loud sobs if they're going to reach another house. And this is where it gets interesting. This is going to be from their other writer, which is E, which is from the north. So just listen to this. He says, I am Joseph, he said to his brothers. Is my father still alive? Now that's interesting here in chapter 45. He's asking, is my father still alive? I want to read what was happened in chapter 44. Verse 19. If you want to go to chapter 44 of Genesis, you can shut this off and then read chapter 44 in verses 19 and 20, and then cut it back on, and we'll be right here together, because when you come back, I'll be reading the part that you just finished reading. Verse 19 says, my Lord asked his servants, have you a father or another brother? Verse 20 says, so we said to my Lord, we have an aged father and a younger brother, the child of his old age, and this one's full brother is dead, and since he is the only one by his mother who is left, his father is devoted to him. So they tell him, they know in chapter 44 that the father is still alive, but in chapter 45, he's asking the same question again. And he tells them, I am Joseph, he said to his brothers. Is my father still alive? They already know it. He already knows it. But his brothers could give him no answer. So dumbfounded were they. Now, they're going to be dumbfounded for a good while. We're going to find out in just a moment. So dumbfounded were they that at him, he said, now, here we go back to the J source. That was the E source. The E source already had said that he is, the J source had already said that the father was alive. Now, that was the E source. Now, the north, pardon me. And now we're going to go back to the south. Come closer to me, Joseph told his brothers. And when they had done so, he said, I am your younger brother, Joseph. Now, he had already told him that back in chapter 3. He says, I am Joseph, he said to his brothers. So this, where he's already told it, is not from this source here. It's from another source. And the redactor just takes one part and puts it in with another part, wherever he wants. Verse 5 says, "But now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for having sold me here." Remember, they sold him to the Ishmaelites. "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt." Now we're going to change from the family to what was going on in Egypt. "But now do not be distressed, and do not be angry at yourselves for having sold me. It was really the sake of saving lives that God sent me here ahead of you." Now he's an optimist. They sold him into Egypt, but he says it wasn't really you. It really was God, because so many people would have starved if it hadn't been what you had done. So it was God's plan that you're doing this, not yours. So you remember, he's the one that gave food to his family. If he hadn't, they would have starved. Verse 6, "The famine has been in the land for 2 years now, and for 5 more years cultivation will yield no harvest." So you remember, they had 7 years of good crops and 7 years of bad. So now they've had 2 years of bad, so they got 5 more. "God therefore sent me on ahead of you to ensure for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives in an extraordinary deliverance." It's God that did all of this, because now you're going to get to live. "So it was not really you, but God who had me come here. And he's made me a father to Pharaoh." He's like Pharaoh treats him so much just like he's his own father. "The Lord of all his household." I have control of everything. "And ruler over the whole land of Egypt." So because of what you did, it was God's plan through you to get me here. "Hurry back then to my father and tell him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me without delay,'" because they're starving up there. "You can settle in the region of Goshen." Now Goshen is in northern Egypt, and it's very fertile land and good climate and everything. So they're going to get the best part. "You can settle in the region of Goshen, where you will be next to me. You and your children and your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and everything that you own, bring them. I will provide for you there in the 5 years of famine," because we're still going to have 5 more years that lie ahead, "so that you and your household and all that are yours will not suffer want." Verse 12, "Surely you can see for yourselves, and Benjamin can see." Now Benjamin's his younger brother. That's through his full blood brother through Rachel. And Benjamin and Joseph are the favorite ones because Rachel was his favorite wife. "You can settle here in the region of Goshen, where you will be near me, you and your children and your children's children, your flocks and herds, and everything that you own." Okay, back to verse 12. "Surely you can see for yourselves, and Benjamin can see for himself, that it is I who am speaking to you. Tell my father," verse 13, "tell my father all about my high position in Egypt and all that you have seen. But hurry and bring my father down here to me." His father's getting old. "Tell my father all about my position in England, all that you have seen, but hurry and bring my father down here to me." So now we're going to verse 14. "Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin." Just one. There's 11 of them there, and he hugs Benjamin because these two are full blood brothers. "Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept on his shoulder. Joseph then kissed all his brothers." Now he's going to get to the others. Benjamin was separate. "Then he threw his arms around his brothers." Then verse 15. "Joseph then kissed all his brothers and wept over them, and only then were his brothers able to talk to him." Remember, they were dumbfounded through all this. Now that's finally, after all of this, they finally get to talk to him. "The news reached Pharaoh's house. Joseph's brothers have come. Pharaoh and his officials were pleased." So now look at verse 16 for closely now. It says this. The news reached Pharaoh. It says here that Pharaoh knows now. It reached Pharaoh's house. Joseph and his brothers have come, and Pharaoh and his officials were pleased. They're pleased. They know he's there. Now, if you can go for just a moment to verse 31 in chapter 46, if you can go one chapter farther, and you cut this off and then cut it back on, go to chapter 46, which is the next chapter, and read 31 and see what it says here. Verse 31. Well, we'll start with 30. And Israel said to Joseph, Israel is sometimes called Israel, sometimes Jacob, but the same guy. That's his daddy. And Israel said to Joseph, at last I can die now that I have seen for myself that you are still alive. And verse 31 says, Joseph then said to his brothers and his father's household, I will go up and inform Pharaoh, telling him that my brothers and my father's household, whose home is in the land of Canaan, have come to me. So in 46, they're telling him for the first time again. So that's from another writer. It's the same thing, but in different places. So in chapter 45, we knew in verse 16 that the Pharaoh knew. But in 46, in verse 31, the Pharaoh's just now finding out it again. So when we find these doublets, it's two different writers. One writer's got sent his part, another writer's got his part, and then here comes the redactor, and he puts them together. Let's look at verse 17. We're going back to chapter 45, verse 17. So Pharaoh told Joseph, say to your brothers, this is what you shall do. Load up your animals and go without delay to the land of Canaan. There get your father and your household and all that came to me, and tell them all to come to me, and I will assign you the best land in Egypt, which is Goshen, where you will live off the fat of the land. Verse 19 says, instruct them further, do this. Take wagons from the land of Egypt for your children and your wives, and bring your father back here. Do not be concerned about your belongings, for the best of the whole land of Egypt shall be yours. Verse 21. The sons of Israel, or the sons of Jacob, either one, the sons of Israel acted accordingly. Joseph gave them the wagons as Pharaoh had ordered, and supplied them with provisions for the journey. He also gave to each of them a set of clothes, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 sets of clothes. Now that's showing partiality. And you know what happened before with partiality? Those brothers got mad. Then they took their brother Joseph and threw him in a well to let him die. Finally, they decided, well, we can make some money out of this. So they sold him into Egypt. It does not pay to have favorites when the ones that are not favored have to look around and see, hey, why don't we get something like this? He also gave each of them a set of clothes. Verse 23. Moreover, when he sent to his father, what he sent to his father was 10 donkeys loaded with finest products of Egypt, and another 10 loaded with grain and bread and provisions for his father's journey. Because it's going to be a while. It's going to be a little bit of a tough trip going. And the man's getting older. Jacob's getting older. And so he's sending them all of these things to have. Verse 24. As he sent his brothers on their way, he told them, do not quarrel on the way. Now, you remember back at the very first, Jacob was asking him, what's going on? And Joseph tells him, they're quarreling, they can't get along. And that's one of the reasons they didn't like him. Verse 25. So they went up from Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. Now here it says Jacob, back there it said Israel. But it's the same person, because Jacob's name was changed to Israel. Verse 26. When they said Joseph is still alive, in fact it is he who's governing all the land of Egypt, he was unmoved, for he did not believe them. He doesn't believe those boys. They're not the best boys anyway. But he doesn't believe them because he went from disappearing and not thinking being killed, and now he's going to rule Egypt. Verse 27 says, but when they recounted to him all that Joseph had told them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to transport him, the spirit of the father Jacob came to life. He has been down for so long. Enough, said Israel. My son Joseph is still alive. I must go and see him before he dies. So now we have finished with Joseph not knowing, or the brothers not knowing that Joseph is his real brother. They have known now that they're going to have it made for the rest of their life. And he gets to see his real blooded brother, Benjamin, and his daddy has come to live with him. All is well that ends well. And I hope it is well in your home with the peace of Jesus. God bless.